And I would like to introduce the next speaker, Steve Carroll from LinkedIn. And Steve, are you here with us?
Hi, guys.
Yeah, hi. And Steve is going to talk about LinkedIn Sales Navigator because Steve is professional of this tool and what targets you can have, how to understand and engage your future customers.
Nice. Will I go ahead and share my screen, Olga?
Yes, please.
Great. Okay. Hopefully you can see my slides now. They up?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and very happy to be here and happy to be involved in such a great discussion. So as Olga alluded to today, what I'm going to really dive into is a lot to do with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but not just about the tool itself, what you guys can do to complement that to ultimately target new customers, understand them, and then evidently kind of engage with them at the end. So before I jump into anything, I just want to introduce myself. So for context, my name's Steve Carroll. I work at LinkedIn Sales Solutions here in EMEA. So I started in LinkedIn almost or over 2 years ago now, and I was originally a sales development representative. So as of about February of this year, I moved into an account management role. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm working with SMB businesses across EMEA. And what I'm really trying to do is get them to embrace social selling. So that's why conversations like today are super important, and great to see such strides being made in Russia right now. So more specifically, what I'm kind of doing is getting to kind of coach them to help them identify high opportunities in their territories and really see those accounts that could have good potential for them going forward. But not only identifying those businesses, but ultimately connecting with the right decision makers. So avoiding kind of gatekeepers and getting straight into conversation with the kind of C-suite decision makers. So for today's agenda, I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to jump straight into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So there's three very important fundamentals here that I want to discuss today. So before you even decide to reach out to someone, it's essential that you have an incredibly strong presence on LinkedIn. So what I'm going to start off by doing is highlighting how you guys can build a strong digital footprint, which represents yourself and your business. After that, I'm going to kind of jump into Sales Navigator and really focus on the kind of advanced search functionality. So show you guys how we can identify very specific titles and organizations within your region or a very specific region, for example. Then what I'm going to finish off with is a deep dive into kind of B2B outreach. So this is kind of the final hurdle. A lot of people make mistakes, but really what I'm going to do here is focus on a couple of key approaches or techniques that I've picked up in the past, which really leverage kind of social selling. So it's a very much a buyer first approach, and it's very targeted. So once that's finished, I'll leave it over to you guys and see if you have any questions that I can hopefully answer. So your profile, your story. So as I said, your LinkedIn profile is a really good opportunity for you to build your own digital footprint. And what this is going to do is it's going to be a representation of you and your business. So it's a really important area for you guys to be really strong. And so it's important because, first of all, if a customer is researching business, where are they going to look first? They're likely to going to look at maybe your website, but then they're probably going to look you up on LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that you have a really good kind of element of information, and you have a really good message and vision that you're getting across in that. When you think about sending someone emails, and this is something we'll talk about later on in the presentation, but when you're sending an email, the first thing they're going to do, they'll read your email, but they're going to go straight to your profile. So if this isn't strong, you're not going to be a good representation of yourself, and they're likely that they won't respond. So statistically speaking, what does this mean? Okay. So LinkedIn sellers with complete profiles see on average a 45% increase in email acceptance rates. Okay, so as you can see, the two kind of contrasts here, we've got two Veronica Smith profiles. I think everyone here would agree with me when they say they'd be a lot more inclined to respond to the individual at the top rather than the individual at the bottom. And it's very obvious. It's There's a lot more credibility, there's a lot more information, there's a lot more personalization. It's a warmer person to respond to than an incomplete profile, okay? So the stats speak for themselves. You're 6 times more likely to be viewed by others. So not only are you getting better responses, but your brand and your exposure of your business and yourself is going to be a lot stronger out on LinkedIn. And then I guess the last one is it's 2 to 3 times more likely to receive the lift and actions. So these actions can be connection requests, views, and responses, etc. to messages. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what kind of steps do I need to do to have a really complete profile or a winning sales profile? So what I've done here, I've essentially summarized 8 of the key features that you guys need to kind of make sure that you've got completed in order to have a complete profile. So what I'll do is I'll just fly through these and then we can move on to the next element. But what I'd recommend is having a look at these slides afterwards or taking a screenshot and kind of actioning these to make sure that your profile is up to scratch. So first thing is a custom URL. So you can essentially create a personalized URL using your first name, second name, etc. And it just gives a better lasting impression with your customers should you be sharing your profile with other individuals. And it's obviously easier for yourself to remember as well when sharing it. More importantly, a professional photo. So make sure it's high quality. It's a professional headshot. It's not a cropped image from a personal event or just an image that, you know, it's not really staged. So just make sure it's a headshot that you've done in high quality and it's not kind of cropped from a personal outing. Background photo, so use something that reflects your brand, your business, your industry, something that will capture the attention of your prospects. Headline is an extremely important section, and this is somewhere where I see a lot of people kind of fall short. So some people might say they're a CEO of a finance company, whereas when you've got your sales hat on, what you're trying to do is think of an attention grabbing kind of one-liner. So if I was helping financial directors in the US, what my headline would be is helping financial directors in the US to combat tax problems, something along those lines. So what you're trying to do is think of a statement, a one-liner that's going to grab the attention, grab the interest of the people that you're trying to sell to. Summary is the next important section. So when someone goes to your profile, they'll likely click on your summary. And this is a very good opportunity for you to give some context about your experience, your current business, your role, contact information, etc. Another area where I see people fall short is the experience section. So if you look at the example that I have here, you can see sales director, I've got the title, I've got the company, but I've got a lot of rich background information on what they do, what their kind of key role is, and how they help customers. So make sure to use this because it builds that credibility. It gives people more context to what you actually do. To support that, use rich media. We know that people in nature like images and video much more than text. So use that media that you have available about your company and populate it into your kind of profile. And then the last one, really important, and it's really good to be a proactive approach with this. So recommendations. So when you're working with a client, you have a strong relationship, like any person would do, whether it's asking someone to post on your website or ask for a referral, get them to leave a recommendation on your profile, because if a buyer clicks on your profile, sees that you've got really strong relationships with your past customers, they're going to feel a lot more trust towards you and they're going to think you're a lot more credible salesperson. So these are 8 tips, very simple changes, and feel free to click on my profile as a kind of reference to use, but get these done and I think it'll be really important for your profile. Next slide. So this is an interesting one. So a lot of you might not be aware that your usage of LinkedIn is actually measured, and you guys will all have a score. And this score is called your social selling index. And essentially what it is a measurement of how you establish your professional brand, how well you find the right people, how well you engage with insights, and ultimately how you build relationships, okay? So why is this important? The reason it's important is because the higher the score you have, the more visibility you will have to your prospects. So people with higher SSI scores will appear up the list compared to people who are less active on LinkedIn. So if you're trying to build your brand, build your presence on LinkedIn, Really important to get this score up. So you're probably wondering again, so what do I need to do to build this score up? So I'm going to show you now. So when it comes to creating a professional brand, very simple. Make sure your profile is complete, like I just showed you there. Lots of multimedia, cover photos, etc., and endorsements. So endorsements are, you've probably seen them, endorsing people for Excel and teamwork, all those sort of things. So really build that one up. Finding the right people, and this is what I'm going to show you guys in a bit. Finding the right people is a lot about Sales Navigator. So how you're actively hunting for new clients. So whether it's searches, profile views, prospecting, all that sort of stuff, that's where this section comes into play. Building strong relationships. So how much connections you have, more specifically, how much kind of VP level, director level connections that you have in place, and then the acceptance rate of those connections. So be very cautious. You have about 100 connection requests you can send per week. Don't use a spray and pray approach and kind of hope that everyone replies. Send connection requests with a personalized message that's going to let them know that they're uniquely qualified, and it's not just another person that you're kind of blasting with the send connection button. The last one's engage with insights. So it's just about your kind of social nature on the platform. So sharing, liking, commenting, all these kind of things will help build up that score there. So that's social selling index. I hope some of you get the chance to look on the hyperlink. If I jump back quickly, as you can see, www.linkedin.com/sales/SSI. So make sure to have a look at that today and then measure your improvement as you go on. Okay, so LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So before I share my screen and jump into the tool, I just want to give you a bit of a brief summary of what the tool actually is, because I'm sure there's people here today that might not be familiar with it. So it's essentially a social selling platform by LinkedIn, which includes an array of features which mainly focus on kind of helping you to find the right prospects, understanding them with key insights, and then ultimately engaging with them directly via email. And as we know, with data protection, all this GDPR stuff that's coming into play, it's really important that we have other ways of contacting people when email is no longer an option. Okay. So typically you're probably wondering, okay, what kind of results can I expect from using a tool like this? So our typical customers will see kind of three key areas where we kind of measure success on this. So more pipeline. So we've seen about 18% on average customers increase in pipeline. And this is because of the access to more prospects. So on LinkedIn as a whole, there's about 740 million people. Within Russia alone, there's about 7+ million. And this number is growing, which I'm sure Olga has talked about already. Higher win rates. So there's about 7% increase in higher win rates that you can expect. And this is because of the more data that you have, the insights into your customers and their businesses enable you kind of to be more strategic during the sales process. And then the final one is larger deals. So you can expect, and this is probably the biggest one, where we can see a 33% increase in larger deals. And really this is because of the ability for you guys to multi-thread not only into different departments, but to multi-thread into different regions. So you might have a strong presence in a multinational in Asia, but you're finding it difficult to multi-thread into the US. So Sales Navigator will essentially enable you guys to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into Sales Navigator. And Olga, if you can let me know if that's still sharing. Is it on Sales Navigator now?
Yes, you're sharing and we can see your Sales Navigator interface.
Great. I'm going to jump in and zoom in because I imagine it's quite small. So there's a huge amount of functionality to Sales Navigator. So unfortunately, I won't get to show you everything today. But as I said, if anyone has any interest in discovering this further for their team, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email after this call. But what I will show you, and what it's probably most valuable element of Sales Navigator, is the ability to leverage a lot of data. So say, for example, we look at Russia and we have 7 million plus people on LinkedIn. How do we leverage that data and filter it down to really specific and kind of high fit decision makers? So that's what I'm going to show you guys today. So Sales Navigator essentially leverages that data on LinkedIn and allows you to be really specific with it and really focus on, kind of high potential, high fit customers. So as you can see here, I'm in the tool. It looks quite similar to LinkedIn in that I've got these insights and alerts based on people. but these people are specifically people that I've saved to. So specifically people that I'm trying to sell to right now, people in my books of business, or territories or regions, etc. Okay, so how do I find them? How do I save them? So you'll notice this all filters section up the top. And essentially what LinkedIn does is gives you the ability to kind of filter using about 30 plus search filters on accounts and leads. So leads is essentially LinkedIn lingo for prospects, individuals, etc. So for this example, I'm just going to run through some of these filters and focus maybe on the Russian market for this example. Okay. So I'm not going to jump into these ones right now, but the clear and obvious one right straight away is the geography filter. So first thing I'm going to do is search Russia. And as you'll see below here, I have the ability to search by different regions in Russia as well. So if I target specific cities, etc., I'll be able to do that too. So as you can see, 7 million plus people. Now, what else will I do? So say, for example, I'm a consultancy firm that works with, say, banking clients, and we'll say oil and energy type clients, so financial services. So I can filter this down so it's only showing me people that work within banking and financial services. So I've already made the results from 7 million down to 170,000. Okay. So going down a bit further, what happens if I only work with maybe C-suite decision makers? So what I will do is I'll go to this section here, seniority, and I will only look for results of people in a C-suite level role. So this is the LinkedIn kind of back-end stuff, identifying people by their role. So this will show me only C-suite decision makers. Okay. Alternatively, if I had a very specific decision maker that I went after, so if I wanted to target, let's say, Chief Financial Officer, I can see it here. And what it will do is it will only give me results for Chief Financial Officers. So as you can see, the results are quite small there. I could put in other similar kind of titles, so head of finance, different things like that, and it will bring in those results as well. But for this one, we'll just focus on Chief Financial Officers. So what happens if I typically have success with people who are maybe new to an organization? So what I'll do to identify that is I'll actually search by people that have been in their current position maybe less than 1 year. Because for me, someone who's new to a business is likely there for a reason. They're likely more inclined to adopt change, etc. So I can click less than 1 year and it will show me only those new starters. Okay. To make it more specific again, what happens if I run a consultancy business and I only have the capacity to work with maybe smaller organizations? Well, that's when I'll use these types of filters here. So as you can see, I can search specific companies, but probably more relevant for this one is company headcount. So say for me, I'm working by myself, I'm working with maybe 1 or 2 colleagues. We don't have the capacity to work with the larger enterprises, okay? So what we'll probably do is we'll look at kind of 50 to maybe, 200, 500, okay? So as you can see, that's broken this down into 50 results. And what I'm going to do now, rather than dive into some of these other filters, because I know we'll be tight on time today, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to press search, okay? Once that's loaded, you can see here now I've got a list of results of CFOs that are working in the banking and financial services industry in Russia for companies between 11 and 500 headcount, okay? So once I have this list of results, it can be a bit kind of a bit intimidating seeing 50 results. Where do I even start? Okay. So it's really important to prioritize these. And this is why we have this section here called spotlights. So what spotlights will do is it will identify quick win opportunities for you to help you kind of engage in a personalized and relevant manner. So the first one you're going to see here is change jobs in the past 90 days. That's a really useful filter because, as I touched on before, new people, new opportunities. And on top of that, it's also a really good warm way to reach out to someone. Congrats on your new role. How are you liking it so far, etc., etc. But I won't touch on this right now is because this is a corporate feature and it's more relevant for larger organizations, but I'm happy to discuss that with anyone who is looking at this for their wider business. Mentioned in the news in the past 30 days, what it does is we work with a number of news partners across the world. If that decision maker was mentioned in the news in the past 30 days, it will flag them and it will link you to the article as well. So again, It's creating opportunities for you to be really personalized and be really relevant without having to do a huge amount of work in the process. This one here is extremely important. So posted on LinkedIn in the past 30 days. So thankfully, everyone here, I'm going to assume, is quite engaged on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be on this call. However, as we know, there's a lot of people that have profiles that don't really log in that much. They're not that active. This filter, this spotlight here, will essentially identify people who've posted on LinkedIn in the past 30 days. So they're likely to be quite engaged users, quite active, and they're going to be looking at their emails quite regularly. So this would be a good start to identify people that might be more inclined to respond to you. Shared experiences, studied at the same universities, went to the same, worked at the same company, all these kind of key commonalities in your profiles. It will flag these and it will obviously create a nice conversations. And then the last one, and this is maybe something that's more specific if you were to do a broader search, is to see how many people follow your company. So if any of these decision makers followed LinkedIn, and I'm going to press this right now, so I can see only one of the individuals, his name is Max. So Max actually follows the LinkedIn company page. For you guys, your own businesses, if a decision maker follows your business on LinkedIn, it's likely they're going to be interested in purchasing, interested in your organization. So just a really cool kind of spotlight to look at there. So decision makers aside, you might be taking even a step back from this and you might actually be entering a new market, for example. I know this is quite an important topic of this conversation. So what happens if you're actually entering a new market and you want to understand the businesses and the organizations that are present in that? So this is where I press account results. And what it's done now is it's copied over some of the filters that I've used. So Russia, banking and financial services organizations with kind of 11 to 500 headcount. And as you can see, there's a lot of results there. But for me, if I was entering a new market, I was entering Serbia, I was entering Hungary, etc., I could search this and it would essentially identify businesses that might not be on my radar already. And on top of that, I can get really specific with these filters. So I'm going to jump in here. So I search these organizations by their department headcount. So as I said before, if I'm doing financial consulting, I might want to work with businesses that might have a very small finance department. So they might need to outsource some of this. So what I might do is click finance and then I'll do max 5 people. So alternatively, what I can do is I can search organizations by their revenue. So if I only work with kind of businesses that are minimum yielding 5 million a year, I can easily just enter it into this section here, and it will flag businesses that are of that kind of size. Not only that, I can search company headcount growth. So for me, I work with sales organizations, and typically a lot of the high fit sales organizations are going to be in a high growth period. So we're looking at those tech startups, et cetera, et cetera. For me, I'll always be looking at maybe the higher percentage growth. So the businesses that are in a high growth phase, because they're going to be a lot more inclined to speak with me, okay? So if I press search on this now, as you can see, I've got 63 results that I can work with, Russian organizations that are present on LinkedIn. Okay, I might stop right now, Olga. I don't know if you plan to do any questions during the call, but if anyone has a quick question, or Olga, if you have a question yourself, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. I think we in the chat we don't have questions. People just would like to get the recordings, but I would like to ask a question about social selling index. Maybe you would like to give us some tips and tricks how to increase your social selling index. Of course, there are some obvious things, yes, that you should post, you should etc. But maybe you have some other advanced tips and tricks.
Yeah, so I'll jump back into the slide there quickly. Really, so it's the biggest challenge with LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot of the speakers before me have talked about this today, but it's like the continuity. So constantly having a plan of posting content and engaging with content on a consistent basis. So if you decide I'm going to post for a couple of weeks, get my score up, and then it'll be great, my social selling index will be increased, that approach isn't going to work. you have to almost have a really systematic approach to how you use LinkedIn. So for me, what I try and do is build out a calendar or a kind of cadence of what activity I want to do on LinkedIn. So for me, when I'm posting content, and this is a really important rule, is the 70-20-10 rule. Okay. So 70% of what you post should be interesting topics that are relevant to your prospects. So you're not talking about your business. You're not trying to sell to them. You're trying to engage them with content that they will be interested in. So that's the first rule. Second thing is the 20%, or so the 20% rule should be related to kind of more specific industry topics. So closer to what you're trying to offer, what you're trying to sell, but not completely related. And then the last thing is 10%. So 10% should be content about your business, you trying to essentially sell to people. So just get that balance right. If you're posting on LinkedIn, you want stuff that's interesting and beneficial to your prospects. You don't want to just constantly push out information about your business, because that won't draw their attention in. So get the right balance. So for me, consistency in how you post and engage with people on LinkedIn. And secondly, make sure what you are posting, what you are commenting, etc., is of interest and is relevant to your decision makers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, have you ever seen 100 social selling index?
Good question. I haven't, and mine is somewhere in the 70s, which is considered very good. But it'll be interesting if anyone on this call has a higher social selling index. I'll have to have a virtual coffee with them to learn how to do it. No,
Yeah.
I have not seen 100 social selling index. That'd be very impressive.
Yeah, sometimes I have 80 something, but
Wow.
and I know one guy who who has 90, but I never seen 100. Yeah,
No,
it's interesting.
no. I think you would have to be a full-time LinkedIn person to do that. You would have to be every minute of every day posting and commenting on people's profiles. But no, anything plus 70 is very good. So if you have a goal, if you want to set a goal on this, 70 plus is a very good number to achieve.
Yeah, okay. And actually, when I worked for Microsoft, we had this benchmark at 60 that if you have above 60 is already okay. What do you think about it? Is it or not?
No, it's good. So from my understanding, anyone on this call is very interested and passionate about social selling. So I think as a minimum standard, everyone here should be pushing for 70, because that 60 score was likely across the company. So we might have people in finance, people in accounting that might be as active on the platform. So really 70 is a really, really good score. 60 is very commendable. But I think for people on this call, you're obviously very interested in the platform and maximizing its potential. There's no reason why 70 is not an achievable number.
And one more question about social selling index. How it influences your LinkedIn presence? For example, does it increase your number of views of your profile or your content or something else? How how does it influence?
Yeah. So LinkedIn are very sneaky in that they incentivize people who are more active on the tool, because obviously if people are more active on the platform, it's beneficial to them. So what they do is the more active you are, so the higher your social selling index is, the more benefits you'll get. So when your prospect is, clicking on their home feed, your post will be at the top, and it won't be maybe your competitor's post at the top, because you're more active on the platform. So they have all these different ways of kind of rewarding people who are active. So you'll become more visible in lead recommendations and probably suggestions for sellers, all these kind of different areas where it's creating opportunities for you. You'll be higher up the list than maybe some of your competitors. So it's highly beneficial from a business perspective for you to have a strong social selling index score.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have a question about creator mode. You know this function, right? Of LinkedIn profiles, creator mode.
Creator mode. I'm not too familiar with it. Now, what is creator mode?
This is kind of you can make your profile look different. For example, you can turn it on and it will look like a profile of content maker. Some, for example, featured will be higher, featured section will be higher. You will have some hashtags like I talk about blah blah blah, and some other changes to your profile. And I think it's probably not sales navigator, so we can go back
Yeah.
to Sales Navigator questions.
Yeah, I won't even pretend that I know what that is, but I imagine it's for kind of influencer people on LinkedIn
Yeah,
that kind of have a high traction rate on their posts or post a lot of content. But yeah, I'm
right,
not too
right.
sure, but I can look into it and maybe send some information after this.
Yeah, I have some more questions about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Actually, when we started using it, I started using LinkedIn Sales Navigator in like 2015 or something.
Yeah.
It was quite stable in terms of new features. There were no new features for a long time, for several years, and suddenly this product has started like developing, and um, some new features started just appearing there. What happened?
Yeah. So would you like me to discuss some of the cool new features? Is that what you'd like to?
Yeah, it
Okay,
would be great. It would be great. Yes. For example,
cool.
some tips and tricks that Sales Navigator gives you. Yeah, it would be cool.
Yeah, so one of the cool new features that we've brought in is a thing called buyer interest alerts. So essentially what this does is it actually flags businesses and the decision makers from those businesses who are engaging with your website, engaging with your marketing on LinkedIn, or engaging with your LinkedIn company page. So you can actually identify specific decision makers and specific businesses who are actually researching, say, Russian finance consulting.com, for example. So we're giving sellers as much data as possible to help them target the right salespeople, etc. So that's a really interesting one. Another thing that we've introduced is a feature called Smart Links. So I'm sure everyone on this call has spoken with a decision maker and they've asked them to send them more information, or they've asked them to send a proposal. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, that decision maker might take their time to get back to you, or they might not respond. So what Smart Links does is it allows you to consolidate those kind of proposals or those kind of product information leaflets into a trackable link, so that when you send it to the person, you'll get notifications essentially to say, John from Russian company X has opened your document. He's looking at this page and he's really interested in this document. And now he's actually sharing it with this decision maker, and this decision maker. So it's just
Could you
enabling
show
you
it?
guys.
Sorry for interruption. Could you show it, please? Yeah, is
Sure.
it possible?
Yeah. So give me 2 seconds. So if I click Smart Links here and I'll look at an example. So these are a number of different examples that I've created for customers and colleagues. And as you can see in this one here, this is an internal one that I've created. So if I click modify, you can see I have a PowerPoint, I have a recording, I have another PowerPoint and 2 web links. If I click on analytics, I can see each and every individual that's opened it. I can access their profile. And not only that, but I can actually see detailed engagement insights. So he's not a very good example since he didn't look at it for very long. But if I look at maybe, let's see, someone that looked for quite a while. So these are all different individuals who've opened it at different stages. And as a result, I can see their insights. I'm trying to find one where someone's looked at here we go. So in the document itself, I can actually see which pages they looked at and how long they looked at them. So say, for example, I can see 33 seconds here. They're obviously quite interested in page 10, which might be pricing or technical information, for example. So really useful tool. Opens up the buying circle for you, but also gives you a very strong understanding of when a customer is interested or not. So really cool feature that I use quite a lot. Cool. I have a couple of things I want to squeeze in before, and this is probably the most important thing on my side, is the actual outreach element itself. So it's great that you have a strong presence on LinkedIn. It's great that you have a tool like Sales Navigator to find and engage with decision makers. But unfortunately, I see so many people fall at the final hurdle because they don't research, they don't personalize, and they don't make their outreach relevant. So what kind of sales reps am I referring to? So I created 2 sales representatives here. and I'm sure you'll be familiar with both. You've come across them in different companies and so on. But the people that I see fail typically on LinkedIn is the Andys of this world. So Andy is a kind of guy, he's a numbers man. He goes, if I send 50 messages this week, I'll probably get a 5% response rate. Okay. So what he'll do to hit that number is he'll use a very much a spray and pray approach where he uses generic templates. It's like, hi, I'm Andy from X company. Would you be interested in a call? That kind of stuff. So there's no value add for the customer. It doesn't stand out from the crowd. And as a result, his response rate's a lot lower. On top of that, he's very old school in his approach. So he's not systematic. He doesn't leverage different sales tools like Sales Navigator and other kind of sales enablement tools. And more importantly, he doesn't have time for self-development. So he doesn't take time aside each week to upskill himself in different areas of selling and industry insights, all those different things that make him a more strategic and effective seller. So really, the people that have a huge amount of success on LinkedIn are the Sandys of this world. So what they do is, rather than focus on numbers and output, they focus on quality, okay? And they're honestly actually, and it sounds kind of cheesy to say, but they're really interested in their customer and actually helping their customer. So what they do is they use very tailored outreach. So they do a lot of research on the organization and the decision maker to really understand what makes them tick and ultimately align their product or their service to a particular need or an objective of that business. Not only that, but they obviously leverage the tools available to them. They're very savvy from a technical perspective, and as a result, they're very systematic in how they prospect their accounts. And then lastly, to finish, they always focus on upskilling. So they're always learning more about the different industries so that when they do reach out to people, they know what makes businesses in those industries tick, and they know what's more likely to get a response rate. So you're probably wondering again, how can I be more relevant? How can I be more personalized? How can I kind of be more like Sandy, I guess? So I focus on two outreach models, and I'm sure maybe some of the people on this call might be familiar with a man called Kyle Coleman. He's one of those people that probably has used a LinkedIn creator account and posts a lot on LinkedIn and has a lot of followers. But what he did is he created this checklist, and it enables people to be relevant and personalized at scale. Okay, so it's a very simple checklist. But for me personally, I found it extremely effective and allows me to not only structure my messaging right, but to enable it to be personalized and relevant as well. So I'm going to run through these really quickly. Again, these slides will be available afterwards, so you can look at this in the future. But what it does is, one, substance. So keep your subject line really short. Don't put an essay in your subject line. You're going to lose the attention straight away. Huge area where I see people miss is in the first line. So do not say, hi, John here from XY Consulting, we do blah, blah, blah. They don't want to see that. They want personalization. They want to know that they're uniquely qualified. So they want to know that you wrote this to them for a specific reason. So make sure that you've got that reason, or you've got that personalization in the first line. Because when people check emails, and I'm sure we've all been guilty of it here in the past, when we get 2, 3, 4 emails a day, we're not reading all of that. We're reading the first line. If it captures our attention, great. If not, I'm deleting it. I'm skipping it. Okay. Capture your attention in the first line using personalization. Second thing, and this links back to that kind of self-development and research, it's calling out a challenge that they might have. So typically you'll work with similar clients and you'll have a good understanding of where they might struggle. Call out that challenge and then ultimately offer a better way. So we all work for businesses, and the reason our businesses make money is because we can solve challenges for businesses and we can offer ways for them to achieve their objectives. So think of how your business can either solve their challenge or help them achieve growth targets, etc., etc. To close off, use an interest-based call to action. So huge mistake I see again. You'll probably be familiar with people going, can you speak on Thursday at 2 p.m.? It's kind of like, whoa. It's very intrusive. It's kind of like putting you under pressure, and you don't really feel comfortable saying yes to that. Whereas if you actually ask someone for interests, so is this of interest, or interest to learn more, you're going to get the same positive response that you might get with the other outreach, but it's putting people under a lot less pressure. So if they're interested to learn more, they'll say yes, you'll schedule a call. But if you kind of go with that more direct approach with a specific time, it statistically gets a lot less results. So like it's a lot lower response rate. So that's really important to consider. The last thing, obviously, don't use templates. So I think you would have gathered from today that I don't like templates because people don't read them, people don't respond. So make sure it's personalized, make sure it's relevant. Style use as little we, our language as possible. So don't be talking too much about we do this, we are the best company, X, Y, Z. No one wants to hear that. Okay. They want to know you're thinking of them, not you're trying to tell them that you're great. Zero marketing jargon. Read it before you send it. If it doesn't sound like something you would say to someone in person, don't write it, because we get into this trap where we talk about really fluffy kind of marketing jargon things, and people just don't see it as being authentic. It just seems like a copy and paste thing. So that's an important thing to consider as well. Write the way you speak, as I said before. Keep it professional, but not overly formal. LinkedIn in many ways is quite different to email. So as a result, there's a lot less of a formality to it. It's kind of like a more relaxed approach. And so take that in consideration. Plenty of white space, and keep it to kind of 125 words max, because if they can't see the whole message on their phone, they're not going to read the whole message. So that's a really important thing to consider. Okay. So here's an example that I did using that technique. I'm not going to go through it now because I'm pretty sure we're quite short of time. But again, this is something that you guys can have a look at potentially after this call or once the slides are sent out. The second one I use is another great influencer called Josh Brown. He's based in the US and he's very much focused on kind of social selling initiatives. So his is a more direct to the point one. But I've also found it very useful, especially for kind of short, sharp emails. So what he tries to do is trigger. So in the first sentence, he's kind of trying to highlight a point. What inspired you to reach out to this person over someone else? So as I said before, if someone feels uniquely qualified by you, they're a lot more likely to respond than, a generic kind of outreach. Sentence 2, ask a question that gets them thinking differently about how they're getting the job done today. So you're asking them something about their current processes and you're trying to illuminate a challenge or a kind of a flaw that they might have currently. Third sentence, third-party validation. So don't be afraid to say the work that you're doing with similar customers. Don't be boastful about it, but just give them a kind of specific insight into what you're kind of doing with similar businesses, because this is, again, going to build that credibility. And then obviously, like I said in the last one, low friction call to ask. Ask for interest, not time, and you will see a huge uplift in your responses. So conscious we're about to finish up on time, so I will leave it over to the team if you have any questions, but thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was very valuable, especially the step-by-step approach, how to do it. Yeah, very nice. So I think we asked many questions during your presentation. So I think if someone else will have some questions, they will reach out to you on LinkedIn. And thank you again. It was Steve Carroll from LinkedIn.